the blizzard that swept through Fort Sumner, New Mexico Territory, in November 1878 brought something besides snow and howling wind. It brought a young woman who looked more dead than alive, slumped over the neck of a half-starved mare. Owen Drummond was checking his cattle when he spotted the horse wandering through the whiteout, its rider barely clinging to consciousness. He pulled his coat tighter and urged his stallion forward, squinting against the biting snow. When he reached the mare, his heart lurched. The woman's lips were blue, her skin pale as death itself, and her clothes were little more than rags crusted with ice. "Madam," he called, but she did not respond. Owen dismounted and caught her just as she began to slide from the saddle. She was light as a bird, shivering violently in his arms. He could feel every bone through her thin dress. Without hesitation, he lifted her onto his horse and climbed up behind her, holding her against his chest as he turned toward his ranch. The mare followed without needing to be led. The ride back seemed to take hours, though it was barely 20 minutes. Owen kicked open the door to his small ranch house and carried the woman inside, laying her carefully on his bed near the fireplace. He stoked the fire until it roared, then returned to her side. Her breathing was shallow, her face waxen. He had seen enough people die from exposure to know she was close to the edge. Working quickly, Owen wrapped her in every blanket he owned, then heated water on the stove. He filled a tin cup and brought it to her lips, tilting her head carefully. Most of the water dribbled down her chin, but some made it down her throat. She coughed weakly, and that tiny sound gave him hope. For 3 days and nights, Owen barely slept. He kept the fire burning, fed her warm broth spoonful by spoonful, and changed the blankets when fever sweat soaked through them. On the 4th morning, her eyes finally opened. They were the color of spring grass, wide and confused. She stared at him for a long moment, her lips moving soundlessly. "Easy now," Owen said, his voice rough from exhaustion. "You are safe. You are in my home about 5 miles outside Fort Sumner. I am Owen Drummond, found you half frozen 4 days ago." "Willa," she whispered. "Willa Fletcher." "Well, Miss Fletcher, you gave me quite a scare. Can you tell me what happened to you?" Her eyes filled with tears that spilled down her temples into her tangled blonde hair. "My family, cholera, all of them. We were heading west to California. I was the only one who did not get sick. I buried them myself, one by one. My parents, my 2 brothers. Then the wagon broke down and the oxen wandered off. I took our mare and tried to keep going, but I got lost in the storm." Owen felt a weight settle in his chest. "I am sorry for your loss. That is more than anyone should have to bear." "Where am I going to go?" Willa asked, her voice breaking. "I have nothing. No family, no money, no possessions except the clothes I was wearing." "Do not worry about that now," Owen said firmly. "Right now, you need to focus on getting your strength back. We will figure out the rest later." Over the following weeks, Owen nursed Willa back to health. He cooked simple meals of beans, bacon, and biscuits, apologizing for his limited culinary skills. She ate everything he gave her, slowly gaining back the weight she had lost. Color returned to her cheeks. The hollow look in her eyes began to fade, though sorrow still shadowed her features. As Willa grew stronger, she insisted on helping around the ranch. Owen protested at first, but she was stubborn, determined not to be a burden. She started with small tasks: washing dishes, mending his worn shirts, sweeping the floors. Then she began cooking, and Owen discovered that even with his meager supplies, she could make meals that tasted better than anything he had eaten in years. "Where did you learn to cook like this?" he asked one evening, savoring a stew she had made from salt pork and vegetables from his small root cellar. "My mother," Willa said softly. "She said a woman should know how to make a feast from scraps. We did not have much, but she always made it special." Owen saw the grief flash across her face and changed the subject. Winter is settling in hard this year. Folks in town are saying it will be the worst they have seen in a decade. They said I would never survive the winter, Willa murmured, staring into the fire. I heard some men talking when I rode through town, barely conscious. They looked at me and said I would not last a week. Owen's jaw tightened. Well, they were wrong. You are stronger than they gave you credit for. No, Willa said, turning to look at him. I would have died if not for you. You saved my life, Owen Drummond. The way she said his name sent an unexpected warmth through his chest. Owen cleared his throat and stood abruptly. I should check on the horses. He stepped outside into the freezing night air, his breath misting before him. The snow had piled high around the barn and fences. It would be a brutal winter indeed. Owen had lived through many hard seasons on his ranch, but this was the first time he had someone else to worry about. The responsibility felt heavy, but also strangely right. When he returned inside, Willa had cleaned up from dinner and was sitting in the rocking chair he had made himself, darning one of his socks. The domestic scene struck him with unexpected force. For 5 years since settling this land, he had lived alone, content with the company of his horses and cattle. Now, after just a few weeks with Willa in his home, the silence that had once been peaceful felt like it would be unbearably lonely if she left. The thought troubled him. He was 32 years old, set in his ways, accustomed to solitude. Willa was young. She had told him she was 19 and she had her whole life ahead of her. Once the winter passed and the trails were clear, she would want to move on, maybe continue to California as her family had planned. He had no right to think of her staying. December arrived with even fiercer storms. Some days, the snow fell so thick that Owen could not see the barn from his front porch. He strung a rope between the house and the outbuildings so he would not get lost in whiteouts. Willa worried every time he went out to tend the animals. "You are gone too long," she said one afternoon when he finally stumbled back inside, covered in snow and ice. "I was about to tie myself to that rope and come looking for you." "The cattle needed extra feed," Owen explained, shaking snow from his coat. "They are huddled together, but some of the younger ones are struggling in this cold." Willa helped him out of his frozen outer layers, then guided him to the fire. She had heated water and poured it into a basin for him to warm his hands. As Owen held his fingers in the water, wincing at the tingling sensation, Willa stood beside him, her hand resting lightly on his shoulder. "You work too hard," she said quietly. "You are going to wear yourself down to nothing." "The ranch does not run itself," Owen replied, but he was acutely aware of her touch, the concern in her voice. When had her opinion started to matter so much to him? That night, another blizzard hit with such ferocity that the walls of the ranch house shook. Wind screamed around the corners, and snow found its way through every tiny crack and crevice. Owen stuffed rags around the windows and door, but still the cold seeped in. He added more wood to the fire, building it as high as he dared. Willa sat wrapped in blankets, her face illuminated by the firelight. "I have never seen a storm like this." "It is a bad one," Owen agreed. "We will be snowed in for days, maybe a week. Do we have enough supplies?" "Plenty. I always stock up before winter. We will not go hungry." But as the night wore on and the temperature dropped further, Owen realized the fire alone would not be enough. Even with every blanket piled on, Willa was shivering. The cold was so intense that frost formed on the inside of the windows. Owen made a decision. "Miss Fletcher, I know this is not proper, but we need to conserve heat. We should share the blankets and stay close to the fire. I will keep my distance, but we will both freeze if we do not." Willa looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. "I trust you, Owen." They arranged the blankets near the hearth, and Owen banked the fire to last through the night. They lay down with a careful space between them, but as the hours passed and the cold intensified, that space gradually closed. By midnight, they were huddled together, sharing warmth. Owen was intensely aware of Willa beside him, the softness of her hair against his neck, the gentle rhythm of her breathing, the way she fit perfectly against his side. His arm was around her, holding her close, and it felt more natural than anything in his life. "Owen," Willa whispered in the darkness. "Yes, thank you for everything. I do not know how I can ever repay you for your kindness." "You do not owe me anything, Willa. I did what any decent person would do." "No," she said firmly. "Most people would have left me in that storm. Most people would have taken me to town and left me at the church or with the charity cases. But you brought me into your home. You took care of me yourself. You treated me like I mattered." Owen's throat tightened. "You do matter." He felt her shift, and then her hand found his in the darkness, her fingers intertwining with his. Neither of them spoke again, but Owen lay awake for hours, his heart pounding, afraid to acknowledge what he was feeling. The blizzard raged for 5 days straight. During that time, Owen and Willa existed in their own small world, cut off from everything beyond the walls of the ranch house. They talked for hours, sharing stories of their lives. Owen told her about growing up in Texas, about fighting in the war between the states, about coming to New Mexico territory afterward to start fresh and leave the bloodshed behind. Willa told him about her childhood in Missouri, about her father's dreams of California, about the adventure that had turned into a nightmare when cholera struck. She cried when she spoke of burying her family in shallow graves on the prairie, and Owen held her, offering what comfort he could. They played cards with Owen's worn deck, and Willa taught him a song her mother used to sing. Owen showed her how to carve wood, and she made a small bird that she set on the windowsill. They cooked together, laughed together, and sat in comfortable silence together. By the time the storm finally broke, something fundamental had shifted between them. Owen knew he was falling in love with Willa Fletcher, and the knowledge terrified and exhilarated him in equal measure. When he could finally dig out the door and check on his animals, he found that most had survived, though he had lost 3 cows and a young steer. It could have been much worse. The sky was a brilliant blue, the sun glinting off endless fields of white. The beauty of it took his breath away. Willa stood beside him on the porch, wrapped in one of his heavy coats. "It is like a different world." "It will start to melt soon," Owen said. "Trails should be passable in a few weeks." He did not say what they were both thinking, that passable trails meant Willa could leave. The thought sat between them like a stone. Over the following days, they fell into a new rhythm. Owen resumed his work around the ranch, and Willa helped him. She proved surprisingly capable, learning quickly how to muck stalls, feed the chickens he kept in the barn, and even milk the 2 dairy cows. She did not complain about the hard work or the cold, and her determination impressed him. One afternoon in late December, as they worked together to repair a section of fence damaged by the weight of snow, Owen found himself watching Willa instead of focusing on his task. She was hammering a nail, her face scrunched in concentration, a lock of blonde hair escaping from beneath her wool cap. "You are staring," she said without looking up. Owen felt heat rise in his cheeks. "Sorry, I was just thinking that you have adapted well to ranch life. Most city folk would have given up by now." "I was not really city folk," Willa said, finally meeting his eyes. "We lived on a small farm. I know how to work hard. Still, this is different. It is isolated out here. The nearest neighbor is 10 miles away. Town is an hour ride in good weather. Some people find the loneliness unbearable." Willa set down her hammer. "Do you find it lonely?" "I did not used to," Owen admitted. but now I think I would." The air between them seemed to crackle with unspoken words. Willa took a step closer. "Owen, I need to tell you something. I have been thinking about what I will do when spring comes. I do not have the means to continue to California. I have no money for supplies or even a wagon. The truth is, I have nowhere to go." Owen's heart was pounding. "You could stay here." "As what?" Willa asked softly. "Your charity case." "I cannot continue to impose on your generosity indefinitely. It would not be proper." "Then stay as my wife." The words were out before Owen could stop them. Willa stared at him, her green eyes wide with shock. Owen plunged ahead, knowing he had to say it all now or lose his courage. "I know we have not known each other long, and I know I do not have much to offer. This ranch is small, and the work is hard, and the winters are brutal. But I have come to care for you, Willa. More than care for you. I love you. I love your strength and your kindness and your laugh. I love the way you sing while you cook and the way you are not afraid of hard work. I know I am asking a lot, and if you do not feel the same way, I will help you get to wherever you want to go when the trail's clear. But if there is any chance you might feel something for me too, then I am asking you to stay. Marry me and make this ranch into a home." Willa's eyes filled with tears. "Owen, I do not want you to feel obligated to propose just because I am in a difficult situation. That is not why I am asking. I am asking because the thought of you leaving feels like someone is tearing out my heart. I am asking because I want to wake up next to you every morning for the rest of my life. I am asking because I love you." "I love you too," Willa whispered. "I have been so afraid to say it because I thought you would think I was just grateful or desperate. But it is more than that. You are the kindest, most honorable man I have ever known. When I look at the future, all I see is you. All I want is you." Owen crossed the distance between them in 2 strides and pulled her into his arms. Their lips met in a kiss that warmed him more thoroughly than any fire could. Willa's arms wrapped around his neck, and Owen lifted her off her feet, spinning her around as she laughed against his mouth. When he finally set her down, they were both grinning like fools. "Is that a yes?" Owen asked. "Yes," Willa said. "Yes, I will marry you, Owen Drummond." They decided to marry as soon as they could get to town. The next week brought clearer weather, and Owen hitched up his wagon for the journey to Fort Sumner. Willa sat beside him on the bench seat, her hand tucked through his arm. The town was quiet, many folks still keeping to their homes after the harsh storms. Owen drove straight to the church, a small whitewashed building at the edge of the main street. The pastor, a weathered man named Reverend Michaels, greeted them warmly. "Owen Drummond, I heard you found yourself a young lady," the Reverend said, his eyes twinkling. "News travels fast, even in winter. Some of the boys saw you both in town weeks back." "This is Willa Fletcher," Owen said. "We want to get married, Reverend." "Today?" the Reverend asked, surprised. "If you can manage it," Owen confirmed. Reverend Michaels studied them both for a moment, then smiled. "Love does not wait for convenience, I suppose. Give me an hour to make arrangements. We will need witnesses." The Reverend rounded up his wife and 2 neighbors to serve as witnesses. Owen and Willa stood before the simple altar, the winter sunlight streaming through the church windows. Willa wore a dress that the Reverend's wife had lent her, simple but clean and pretty. Owen had brushed his best suit and combed his hair, feeling more nervous than he had felt facing down Confederate soldiers during the war. But when Willa took his hand and looked up at him with those green eyes full of love and trust, all his nervousness melted away. He spoke his vows in a clear, strong voice, promising to love and protect her for all his days. Willa's voice shook slightly as she made her own promises, but her words were heartfelt and sure. "I now pronounce you man and wife," Reverend Michaels declared. "Owen, you may kiss your bride." Owen cupped Willa's face in his hands and kissed her tenderly, aware of their small audience but not caring. She was his wife now, and the joy of it filled him completely. Afterward, they stopped at the general store to buy a few supplies and share their news. Mrs. Henderson, who ran the store with her husband, clucked approvingly. "About time you settled down, Owen Drummond," she said. "A ranch is no place for a man alone. And you, young lady, you look much better than when I saw you that day of the first big storm. We were all worried you would not make it." "Owen made sure I did more than make it," Willa said, smiling up at her new husband. "He made sure I thrived." The words struck Owen deeply. He thought about that terrible day when he had found her half dead in the snow, about the hard weeks of winter that had followed, about how this fragile, broken young woman had transformed into his strong, vibrant wife. She had not just survived, she had thrived. And so had he, in ways he was only beginning to understand. They spent their wedding night back at the ranch, and Owen carried Willa over the threshold even though she laughingly protested that it was not necessary. He set her down in front of the fire and pulled her close, suddenly shy despite everything they had been through together. "I want to make you happy," he said quietly. "I want to be a good husband to you." "You already are," Willa replied, her hands resting on his chest. "Owen, I was not looking for a perfect life when I said yes to you. I was looking for a life with meaning, with love. You have given me that. You have given me hope when I thought I had none left. You have given me a home and a future. I could not ask for anything more." They made love that night with a tenderness that brought tears to Willa's eyes and a fullness to Owen's heart that he had never experienced. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the bed, the firelight casting dancing shadows on the walls. "Tell me about your dreams," Willa murmured, her head on his chest. "What do you want for this ranch, for our life?" Owen stroked her hair thoughtfully. "I want to expand the herd, build up the ranch so it is prosperous enough to pass down to our children someday. I want to build you a bigger house with a real kitchen and a porch where you can sit in the evenings. I want to plant an orchard and maybe dig a well closer to the house. But mostly, I just want to build a life with you. Everything else is just details." "I like your dreams," Willa said. "Can I add to them?" "Of course. I want to start a garden in the spring. A big one with vegetables and herbs and flowers. I want to learn to ride well enough that I can help you with the cattle. I want to make this house feel like a real home, with curtains and rugs and maybe a tablecloth for special occasions. And I want children, Owen. I want to fill this ranch with love and laughter and the sound of little feet running." Owen kissed the top of her head. "That sounds perfect to me." Winter continued its grip on the land, but inside the ranch house, spring seemed to have already arrived. Owen and Willa were ridiculously happy, so in love that even the hardest days felt bearable. They worked side by side, planned their future, and learned the intimate details of being married. Willa proved to be not just a hard worker, but an innovative thinker. She suggested they reorganize the barn to make feeding more efficient, and she was right. She experimented with different feed mixtures for the chickens and managed to keep them laying eggs even in the dead of winter. She made soap from tallow and lye, sewed new quilts from old fabric scraps, and somehow made the small ranch house feel cozy and welcoming. Owen, for his part, tried to show his love in every action. He surprised Willa with small gifts, a hair ribbon from town, a smooth stone he found by the creek, a wooden spoon he carved for her. He taught her to shoot so she could protect herself if he was ever away, though the thought of leaving her alone bothered him greatly. He held her every night and told her he loved her, never wanting her to doubt his feelings. In February, a warm spell brought a brief respite from the cold. Owen used the opportunity to ride into town for supplies. Willa wanted to come, but she had been feeling poorly for a few days, so Owen insisted she stay home and rest. At the general store, he ran into Jack Morrison, a fellow rancher who lived about 15 miles east. Jack clapped him on the shoulder. "Heard you got married, Owen. Congratulations. Also heard you are the one who saved that girl everyone thought would not last a week." "Willa is stronger than people gave her credit for," Owen said firmly. No doubt," Jack agreed. "But you deserve credit too. It takes a good man to do what you did, taking in a stranger like that, nursing her back to health. Most would have left her to the charity of the church." "I did what anyone should do," Owen replied, uncomfortable with the praise. "Well, not everyone would. You are a good man, Owen Drummond." "I hope your wife knows how lucky she is," Owen smiled. "I am the lucky one." When he returned home, he found Willa looking pale and tired. His concern spiked. "Are you all right? Should I fetch the doctor from town?" "No," Willa said, but she was smiling despite her pallor. "I think I know what is wrong with me. Owen, I believe I am with child." Owen's heart seemed to stop and then race forward. "Truly, are you sure?" "As sure as I can be without seeing a doctor. I have all the signs my mother described. If I am right, the baby will come in early autumn." Owen swept her into his arms, laughing and crying at the same time. "A baby! We are going to have a baby!" "Are you happy?" Willa asked, though she was smiling. "Happy does not begin to cover it," Owen said. "You have given me everything, Willa, everything I never knew I wanted." He insisted that Willa rest more after that, though she protested that she was not an invalid. Owen took on extra chores so she would not overwork herself. As winter finally loosened its grip and spring arrived in earnest, Willa's pregnancy became more apparent. Her belly began to swell, and she had a glow about her that Owen found breathtaking. In April, Owen began building the addition to the house, determined to have more space before the baby arrived. Willa helped where she could, handing him tools and offering suggestions. By June, they had 2 additional rooms, a larger bedroom and a nursery. Willa filled the nursery with lovingly made items. She sewed tiny clothes and blankets, and Owen built a cradle from smooth pine wood, carving designs of horses and cattle into the sides. They stood together in the nursery one evening, admiring their work. "I cannot believe how much our lives have changed in less than a year," Willa said, her hand resting on her rounded belly. "Last November, I was dying in a blizzard, completely alone in the world. Now I have a husband I love, a home, and a baby on the way. It feels like a dream." "If it is a dream, I never want to wake up," Owen replied, wrapping his arms around her from behind, his hands covering hers on her belly. "You are my dream, Willa. You and this child and the life we are building together." The baby kicked and they both laughed. "Strong little one," Owen said, "takes after the mother." Summer brought its own challenges, with drought threatening the grazing lands and a small prairie fire that Owen and 2 neighbors barely managed to contain. But through it all, Willa remained his constant source of strength and support. Even as her pregnancy progressed and movement became more difficult, she insisted on doing what she could to help. In late September, Willa's labor began in the middle of the night. Owen had fetched the midwife from town 2 weeks earlier, and Mrs. Garrett had been staying in the new addition, waiting for the baby's arrival. Owen was banished from the bedroom, and he paced the main room like a caged animal, flinching at every cry from Willa. "First babies take time," Mrs. Garrett told him during one of her brief appearances. "She is doing fine, Owen. Strong as an ox, that wife of yours." After what felt like days but was actually about 12 hours, Owen heard a new sound, the wavering cry of a newborn. His heart leapt, and he rushed to the bedroom door, stopping when Mrs. Garrett emerged holding a bundle. "You have a son," she said, smiling. A healthy boy with a powerful set of lungs, and your wife is tired but well. Go on in." Owen entered the room on shaking legs. Willa lay propped up on pillows, her hair damp with sweat, her face exhausted but radiant. In her arms was a tiny baby wrapped in one of the blankets she had made. "Owen," she said softly, "come meet your son." Owen sat carefully on the edge of the bed and looked down at the baby. He had a shock of dark hair and a red, scrunched face. As Owen watched, the baby opened his eyes, and Owen felt something shift fundamentally in his soul. This was his son, his and Willa's, a whole new person who depended on them for everything. "He is perfect," Owen whispered. "You are amazing, Willa, absolutely amazing." "We should name him," Willa said. "I was thinking maybe Daniel, after your father." Owen's eyes burned with tears. His father had died when Owen was young, but he remembered him as a good, hard-working man. "Daniel Drummond. I like that very much." They spent the next weeks adjusting to life with a newborn. Daniel was a demanding baby, waking frequently to nurse and fussing when he was put down. Owen and Willa took turns walking him around the house in the middle of the night, soothing him with soft words and gentle rocking. Despite the exhaustion, Owen had never been happier. He loved watching Willa nurse their son, the tender way she cradled him and sang lullabies. He loved holding Daniel himself, marveling at how something so small could be so perfect. He loved being a family. The winter of 1879 was milder than the previous year, for which Owen was deeply grateful. He did not think Willa could handle another brutal season while caring for an infant. As it was, she had her hands full, but she managed with the same strength and grace she brought to everything. By spring, Daniel was sitting up and babbling, and Owen could not imagine life without him. The ranch was thriving too. Owen's herd had grown, and he had made improvements to the property that increased its value. He was even able to hire a young man named Tom to help with some of the heavier work, giving him more time to spend with his family. One evening in May, as they sat on the new porch Owen had built, watching the sunset while Daniel played with wooden blocks at their feet, Willa turned to her husband. "Do you ever think about how different things could have been?" she asked. "If you had not found me that day in the blizzard, or if you had just taken me to town instead of bringing me here." Owen pulled her closer. "I try not to think about it because it makes my blood run cold. I cannot imagine my life without you, Willa. You and Daniel are everything to me." "They said I would never survive that winter," Willa mused. "Those men in town, they looked at me like I was already dead, but you saw something different. You saw someone worth saving." "I saw the woman I would love for the rest of my life," Owen corrected. "I just did not know it yet." Willa laughed and kissed him. "You made sure I did not just survive, Owen. You made sure I thrived. We are thriving together, building something beautiful out of the ashes of my old life. I could not have asked for a better man to love me, a better father for my children, a better partner in all things." "Children?" Owen asked, catching the plural. "Are you telling me something?" Willa's smile was mysterious. "Maybe. It is still early, but I think Daniel might have a little brother or sister by next spring." Owen whooped and lifted her into his arms, spinning her around while she laughed. Daniel looked up from his blocks and clapped his hands, not understanding but happy to join in the celebration. The years that followed brought both joys and challenges. Willa did indeed have another baby the following spring, a daughter they named Sarah, who had her mother's green eyes and sunny disposition. 2 years after that came another son, James, who was quieter than his siblings but equally loved. Owen expanded the ranch steadily, buying additional land when neighboring properties became available. He built Willa the bigger house he had promised, with a proper kitchen and a parlor and enough bedrooms for their growing family. He planted the orchard she had dreamed of, and every spring it bloomed with apple and peach blossoms. Willa created the garden she had wanted, and it became the talk of the county. She grew vegetables and herbs, flowers and medicinal plants. She shared her bounty with neighbors and sold preserves in town. She also became known for her kindness, always ready to help a family in need, never forgetting what it felt like to have nothing. The ranch prospered, becoming one of the most successful in the region. Owen hired more help as the years went on, but he never stopped working alongside his men. He took pride in the land, in the cattle that bore his brand, in the home he had built for his family. But the success of the ranch paled in comparison to the success of his marriage. Owen fell more in love with Willa with each passing year. She was his partner in every sense, helping make decisions about the ranch, raising their children with wisdom and love, and standing by his side through droughts and blizzards, illness and health, triumph and struggle. Their children grew up strong and happy, learning the value of hard work and the importance of family. Daniel inherited his father's love of ranching and showed an early aptitude for working with cattle. Sarah had her mother's gift for growing things and spent hours in the garden. James loved horses and could gentle even the wildest stallion with patience and kindness. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Owen took Willa back to the spot where he had found her that terrible day in November 1878. The location was marked in his memory as clearly as if it had been branded there. They stood together in the spring sunshine, so different from the whiteout blizzard of that day, and Owen pulled his wife close. "I remember every detail of that day," he said quietly. "How scared I was that you would not make it, how fragile you looked, how determined I was to save you." "You did save me," Willa replied. "In every way a person can be saved. You gave me life, love, purpose, and a family. You gave me everything." "You gave me just as much," Owen insisted. "Before you, I was just going through the motions, existing but not really living. You brought color and warmth and joy into my world. You made me believe in love and family and building something that matters. Every good thing in my life started the day I found you." Willa kissed him, soft and sweet. "We saved each other then. We save each other still, every single day." They stood together in silence for a while, remembering, grateful, and deeply in love. The years continued to pass, bringing more children, twin girls when Willa was 30, much to everyone's surprise and delight. The ranch continued to grow and prosper. Owen and Willa faced the challenges of life together, supporting each other through the death of aging parents, the illnesses and accidents that are part of ranch life, and the larger events that shape the territory. And then the state as New Mexico moved toward statehood. They grew older together, their hair turning silver, their faces marking the passage of time. But the love between them never diminished. If anything, it grew stronger, deeper, enriched by shared history and the life they had built together. Their children grew up and started families of their own. Daniel took over much of the day-to-day running of the ranch, showing the same dedication and skill his father had. Sarah married a neighboring rancher's son and moved just 10 miles away, close enough to visit often. James joined the territorial rangers for a time before returning to the ranch and settling down with a schoolteacher from town. The twins were still young, full of energy and mischief, keeping Owen and Willa on their toes. On a cool evening in November 1898, exactly 20 years after Owen had found Willa in the blizzard, they sat together on the porch of their ranch house. Their grandchildren played in the yard while their adult children gathered inside, preparing a celebration dinner in honor of the anniversary. 20 years, Willa said wonderingly. "It seems like yesterday and a lifetime ago all at once." Owen held her hand, his thumb tracing familiar patterns on her palm. Best 20 years of my life. I would not change a single moment, not even the hard parts, Willa asked. The drought of 1885. The year James broke his leg. That terrible spring when we lost half the calves to disease. Not even those, Owen confirmed. Because we got through them together and they made us stronger. Every challenge we faced as a team. That means something. Willa leaned her head on his shoulder. I love you, Owen Drummond. I loved you when I opened my eyes in your bed and saw you watching over me, though I did not recognize it yet. I loved you when you asked me to marry you, standing in the snow with your heart in your eyes. I loved you when you held our babies for the first time, when you built me this house, when you sat with me through my mother's death, when you taught our sons to be good men and our daughters to be strong women. I love you now, with all the force of 20 years of marriage and partnership and friendship, and I will love you until my last breath. Owen's throat was too tight for words. He kissed her instead, a kiss that held everything he felt: gratitude, devotion, passion, and a love so deep it defined who he was. Inside, someone called that dinner was ready. Owen and Willa stood hand in hand and walked into the warmth of their home where their family waited. The table was laden with food and laughter filled the air. Their children toasted them, their grandchildren clamored for attention, and love surrounded them on all sides. As Owen looked around at the faces of his family, at the home he and Willa had built, at the life they had created together, he felt a sense of completion that was almost overwhelming. They had started with nothing, two broken people brought together by a brutal winter storm. But they had built something remarkable, something that would endure long after they were gone. That night, after their family had departed and the house was quiet, Owen and Willa lay in bed together just as they had on so many nights before. The fire crackled in the hearth, casting a warm glow over the room. "Tell me again," Willa murmured sleepily. "Tell me about the day you found me." It was a story she asked for sometimes, especially on significant anniversaries. Owen smiled and began the familiar tale. "There was a blizzard that day, the worst I had seen in years. I was checking on the cattle when I saw a horse wandering through the whiteout. When I got closer, I saw a woman slumped over its neck, barely alive. She was so cold, so still, that I thought I might be too late. But I brought her to my home anyway, laid her by the fire and prayed she would make it through. For 3 days, I sat by her bedside, willing her to live. And on the 4th day, she opened the most beautiful green eyes I had ever seen, and I knew I was looking at my future." "They said I would never survive," Willa whispered. "They were wrong," Owen replied firmly. "You did not just survive, you thrived. We thrived, and we will continue to thrive together for all the days we have left." Willa's breathing deepened as she drifted to sleep, safe and warm in her husband's arms. Owen held her close, grateful for every moment, every day, every year they had been given. The blizzard that had nearly killed her had instead brought her to him, and he would spend the rest of his life being thankful for that storm and the chance it had given him to love this remarkable woman. Outside, the New Mexico wind whispered through the trees of the orchard they had planted together, carrying with it the promise of tomorrow. The ranch house stood solid and strong, a testament to hard work and perseverance. The cattle bore the Drummond brand, and the land stretched out under the endless sky, rich and productive. But none of that mattered as much as the woman sleeping peacefully in Owen's arms, the children they had raised, and the love they had built together. That was the real legacy, the thing that would endure beyond land and cattle and buildings. Love, family, partnership, these were the things that mattered. As Owen finally drifted to sleep, he thought about how a single moment could change everything. If he had not been checking the cattle that day, if he had not seen the wandering horse, if he had made any number of different choices, his entire life would have been different. But he had been there, and he had made the choice to save her, and that choice had led to everything good in his life. They said she would never survive the winter. The cowboy made sure she thrived, and in doing so he had thrived too, had found purpose and meaning and a love that transformed everything. It was a simple story, really a man rescuing a woman from a blizzard. But it was also the most important story of Owen Drummond's life, the beginning of everything that mattered, the foundation of a love that would last a lifetime and beyond. The years ahead would bring more joys and sorrows, more triumphs and challenges. They would celebrate more anniversaries, welcome more grandchildren, and face the inevitable trials that come with aging. But through it all, Owen and Willa would face everything together, hand in hand, heart to heart, just as they had from that very first day when fate and a blizzard had brought them together. Their love story became something of a legend in Fort Sumner. Old-timers would tell the tale of the half-frozen woman and the cowboy who saved her, of how they built one of the finest ranches in New Mexico territory, of how their love had endured through everything life threw at them. Young couples would point to Owen and Willa as proof that true love existed, that the right person could change everything. But for Owen and Willa themselves, it was never about being a legend or an example. It was simply about loving each other, day by day, year by year, building a life together one choice at a time. It was about the small moments as much as the grand gestures, the morning coffee shared on the porch, the way their hands found each other in sleep, the comfort of a familiar voice after a hard day. As the 19th century drew to a close and the 20th century dawned, Owen and Willa entered the twilight of their lives still deeply in love, still partners, still each other's greatest blessing. Their ranch passed into the capable hands of their children, who continued the traditions and values they had instilled. Their grandchildren and eventually great-grandchildren would grow up hearing the story of how Grandma Willa had nearly died in a blizzard and how Grandpa Owen had saved her. In the end, it was a simple story with a simple truth at its heart: love has the power to transform everything. It can take two broken people and make them whole. It can build something beautiful and lasting out of nothing. It can turn survival into thriving, loneliness into belonging, despair into hope. Owen Drummond had ridden out into a blizzard to check his cattle and had found instead his reason for living. Willa Fletcher had been dying, alone and terrified, until strong arms had lifted her to safety, and a kind heart had willed her to live. Together, they had created a love story for the ages, proving that sometimes the harshest winters bring the greatest blessings, and that with the right person by your side, you can weather any storm and build a life beyond your wildest dreams. Their love had not just survived, it had thrived. And that made all the difference.